Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show. Hey, Job Picks, the other half of the show, the parlay, joining me in to break down some UFC Denver. But before we do that, let's all take a deep breath, man. It's good to be back. UFC 303 was just about 8 days ago, 9 days ago. We had the weekend off this past week. But let's look back to UFC 303. How did it go for you?
I ended up the night up 1.9 units. Big thanks to Ian Gary and Gene Silva, two of my biggest plays on the card. My other big play was Myra Buena Silva, and I thought she had a phenomenal first round. I thought she had chances to hurt her opponent and get the finish. She never did, ends up getting cut. So she would have won. I'd have been up like 5 or 6 units on the night, but up nearly 2 units on a tricky card. I can't complain. My other big hit was the over in one of the first nights. It's been weeks now, but let's see. I think it was the first. Oh no, Raytet Saruya versus Carlo Hernandez over 2.5 at plus 110 was free money, and so hitting those 3 bets, 3 of my biggest bets of the night, it was good, man. Up 2 units, I can't complain.
Yeah, I would have been like happy to be in your shoes because I went down 3.66 units. I took a lot of dog shots, man. I had a lot of plus money, good amount of money lines that were underdogs. Cub Swanson nearly got it done for me. Andre Arlovsky by decision. Thought he could have got that one too. So we lose both of those. And then had a little sprinkle on Carlos Hernandez money line at plus 350. He won the last round. Just couldn't get to taking over early enough in that fight, but he did look better than I thought he was. I mean, plus 350, I thought he should have been a little bit smaller of an underdog. I think he beat that price, in my opinion. So I still think that that's a decent bet there. Hit a nice little prop on Joe Pyfer round 1 finish. Hit the Ian Gary money line. And then probably my worst bet of the night was Anthony Smith money line. He looked absolutely terrible. But, sometimes Anthony Smith just goes out there and does not fight. I've already done my rant on Anthony Smith before, man. I called that dude a disgrace to MMA at this point. So, yeah, so it was a losing night for me. But I feel like I made some good bets. And then I had a couple bad bets, of course. But we're looking forward now to a UFC Denver. We got a couple fight nights lined up before the pay-per-view. And UFC Denver is okay. It's nothing too crazy. I mean, women's MMA main event, co-main event is pretty shite to me. 2 old dudes, and then we got some good fights that are on the main card and the prelims, in my opinion. I mean, Drew Dober, Gene Silva, that's a good fight. Josh Van, Charles Johnson, that's a good fight. Even Montel Jackson, Damon Blackshear, that's a good fight to me. So there's some good fights, just not really the greatest main and co-main event, in my opinion. But 11 fights in total. We're going to go through, give you a breakdown, and we'll give you a pick. But if you want the bets, you jump in the Home of Fight Picks premium membership. That's where you get the real bets, because these are picks. These are not what we're putting our money on. We talked about it just when I was breaking it down. You got to look at the value in the bets and make your plays that way. So what do you say? Let's get into it, man.
Let's do it.
Start off with the first fight of the night. We got Josh Fremd against Andre Petroski. Petroski's coming in as the slight underdog. He is the older fighter, but Josh Fremd is the bigger fighter. 6'4", 4 inches taller than him, and both fighters are coming off of knockout losses. One of them being Andre Petroski. Looks really bad. It looks really bad because he got knocked out. Really, we don't even know. At this point, we're making speculations onto what actually knocked out Andre Petroski. Was it the hip bone? Was it some type of heel? Whatever it was a really bad look. Back-to-back knockout losses for Petroski. Maybe a decent buy low spot, but, Josh Fremd is coming off a knockout loss, but he has looked okay in some performances. He has looked okay. This is a greasy matchup. Who do you think will get their hand raised?
Yeah, this is the battle of who do you trust more or trust less, honestly, in this spot.
Yeah.
I mean, Petroski has some recency bias with a lot of people hating on him because of the TKO he suffered after he ran into the hip of Jacob Malkoun. It's a bad look. But at the end of the day, Petroski's a guy who has some power in the right hand. His striking's just average as a whole. But you know, if he can get takedowns and stuff, he's very good on top, at least through the first 2 rounds. I just kind of think he, you know, in those tough, grueling fights, if he's not finding a finish, he kind of drops off a cliff. And I think that was starting to happen against Jacob Malkoun. You know, if he didn't run into the hip there, I think Malkoun was going to, you know, take over and dominate that fight. He's fought some okay competition, I guess. I mean, I don't really think either of these guys are fighting at the highest level. You know, they don't have a good, you know, win to their name. Petroski beat Gerald Mearshart by split decision, but I mean, Gerald's older, doesn't really have much of a striking game, and he still outstruck Petroski there. And you know, the takedowns were almost 2 apiece. I think it was 2-1 or something like that. So I think Petroski, though, if he comes in here and he doesn't gas out, this is going to be a very close fight. But this is at elevation in Colorado, right where Fremd is used to training. Fremd's also 6'4" compared to Petroski's 6 foot. And you know, you look at Josh Fremd and you look at his style. Probably think, you know, he's going to want to strike in this matchup, but I also think he's going to be dangerous with the guillotine attempts and anything like that once Petroski's trying to get this fight to the ground. Fremd is very long. You know, he's got some jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. We saw him submit Cedricus Dumas. You know, he's not a bad guy on the ground, but on the feet, I just think he's going to have the length and the range. He throws good kicks. If he can land the body kick and stuff takedowns, I think this is another fight where Petroski is going to drop off a cliff. And if he does that, I think Fremd should be able to have the better cardio. He's going to hold up a little bit longer and win 2 rounds or finish the show. So if Petroski wins, I think he has to finish him in the first round, because again, those takedowns are going to get a lot harder and harder to come by as the fight goes on when you're fighting at elevation. So I'm picking Josh Fremd. It's not my most confident play, but there's enough there, you know, with him fighting where he's from, where he trains at elevation, having that on his side. I think there's enough for me to pull the trigger.
This is a weird one to me because it's like a rarity where I think both guys could be knocked out. I think both guys could be submitted. And I think both guys could lose a decision. So, like, I think everything's on the table here.
Yeah.
Like, Josh Fremd, really, he just doesn't impress much. Like, on the feet, he's not really dangerous with anything on the feet. He, for his frame, like you'd expect, 6'4", like he should be able to use his weapons pretty well. It just really doesn't use it. And he kind of uses it more in the grappling, you know, threatening with the chokes, the guillotine chokes. He likes that one. And if Petroski's going to look to wrestle in this fight, you know, he's going to be leaving his neck out there. And I think that's an avenue for Fremd to possibly lock up a submission, because Petroski loves head on the outside single leg. And what does that do? That leaves your neck out exposed where a guy could throw his arm under there. And he got ninja choked by Brian Battle on The Ultimate Fighter. I think that's a really good avenue for Josh Fremd here if he's going to be having to defend takedowns. And in the same way, Josh Fremd likes to shoot takedowns with his head out there and his neck out there. So I think Petroski could get a submission as well. And then on the feet, I think Petroski probably hits a lot harder, but he is very, I mean, he's not durable. For one, I don't think he can really take the best punch. And number two, he usually gasses out, and fighting at elevation is not something that I would favor Petroski to do. Let's just say that. Like, later in the fight, if he's getting hit with some shots, I don't think he's going to be, you know, rallying back to get a late win or win a third round to win the fight. So this is a weird one to me. I'm going to go with Josh Fremd, because I think, based on the tape, I actually, pre-tape, I thought Petroski would be my pick. But after I watched the tape, and the biggest thing that stood out to me was the Anthony Hernandez fight for Josh Fremd, and just his ability to survive in some situations on the ground, and just the pressure that Anthony Hernandez puts on you. He never really wilted to it. Was impressive to me. And then, of course, the fight after that, he got guillotine choked by Tresean Gore. So it was like, Josh Fremd, he's all over the board. But if he can survive against Anthony Hernandez, I think he can survive against Andre Petroski and, you know, take over as the fight goes on. So the pick will be Josh Fremd, but more than anything, I kind of like a submission prop for either guy, to be honest. So maybe the fight ends by submission type of thing, or just the fight ends inside the distance. But Josh Fremd is the pick for me.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about it is, like, if I look at both these guys coming off of a loss, and I think which guy is more likely to have a complete fall off and a downhill spiral, it's Petroski. I mean, 2 fight losing streak, both by knockout. The last one was embarrassing. If he gasses out here and gets knocked out again, like he's probably on the chopping block. The UFC is probably not going to be too interested on continuing with a new contract for him coming off of performances like that. So, yeah, I don't know. It is a tough one, though. There's a lot of variables, like you said, but give me Fremd.
I agree. Moving on, we got Montel Jackson coming in as the favorite against Damon Blackshear. These two guys are like spinning images to me. I mean, just the way they fight. 5'10". They both got a big frame for 135. And at their base, they're both, kind of wrestlers. I mean, Montel Jackson has a lot of power on the feet. Like, he has a crazy knockdown rate. I think it's like one of the best in the UFC. Like, I think he has like 10 or 12 knockdowns in the UFC, which is pretty crazy. But he only has 3 or 2 knockouts in the UFC, but he just knocks down his opponent all the time. He does struggle with some takedowns, though. Brett Johns took him down 8 times. Ricky Simone took him down 7 times. And Damon Blackshear's a guy that usually wants to take you down. So it's an interesting matchup because you got a power puncher on the feet who can wrestle offensively. And then you got Damon Blackshear, who likes to grapple offensively and has had some times in his career where his cardio has been in question. So what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think it depends on who's going to come out and be able to fight downhill and move forward in this fight. Because if Damon's put on the back foot, he's going to struggle to get takedowns, and I think Jackson's going to be the one hitting harder. I know Montel doesn't throw the most volume in the world, but he makes it count when he does throw, and he's very clean with it. He's very accurate as well. His striking defense is good. So if this thing plays out on the feet and Blackshear, struggles, I think Jackson could run away with it, find some big shots. I don't think he's knocking out Damon here, but I do think he'll have the bigger moments. But if this thing does hit the mat, I think Blackshear, everybody knows he's very good on the ground. Like, he has multiple twister submissions in his career, one in the UFC. Like, I still think he's a tad underrated there. Like, people don't talk about enough how good and how strong his control is, and he's always looking for some kind of submission when he gets on top. I think Montel Jackson is a good enough wrestler, but I just think if it does hit the mat, he's going to be in a lot of trouble here. I think the minute winner probably going to be Montel Jackson with the striking. The guy who's going to pose more of a threat, especially in the grappling, probably Damon Blackshear. For the pick, I think it's dog or pass for me. Plus 122 on Damon, not a bad look considering like this guy has fought some good competition in the UFC. He had the Farid Basharat loss, where it went to decision. He had some good moments. He knocks out Luan Lacerda, Jose Johnson. He's finishing those guys just like he's supposed to, and he's losing into Mario Batista, who's a beast as well. So this guy's done nothing but come out here and fight his ass off. And honestly, like the Mario Batista decision, Damon outlanded him 90-79. He had 4 takedowns on Mario Batista, and I think Batista is a guy we all look at as a very well-rounded, tough, durable, great fighter in the making. So yeah, if he's doing that against guys like Mario Batista, I mean, paying the underdog price on him here, I feel like he's going to at least give you a chance to hold that ticket if this thing hits the scorecards. So I'm going to take the dog here in Damon Blackshear, but it's a very, very tight fight in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I watched the Blackshear Batista fight today, and I still think Blackshear won the first 2 rounds. Like, I think it is actually crazy that one of the judges gave it 30-27 to Batista. Like, I don't see how you could make that scorecard. I thought he won the first round pretty easily. Thought he won round 2. And then in round 3, Batista won, but it wasn't really by a big margin. So, yeah, dude, I think Blackshear's good. He's been on my radar for a while. I bet on him in his UFC debut against Yusuf Zalal. He won the first 2 rounds. And then got 10-8'd in the third because he gassed out. It was short notice. And we know Zalal is pretty damn good now. And then he fought Farid Basharat. He looked pretty solid in that fight, too. I mean, he lost 2 out of 3 rounds. But Farid Basharat's still undefeated. He's the better Basharat, bro. And I think Basharat is really good. And then he picks up 2 wins, both by finish. And then I think he beat Mario Batista. So I think Blackshear's a really good fighter. And Montel Jackson, go ahead.
Was he on short notice against Batista?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he fought the week before that.
That's right. Yeah. See, I mean, if he had a full camp, like that's probably a different story. That's probably if he made it that close on a week, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, two weight cuts too, right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't a catch weight, was it?
No game planning, no nothing.
Yeah, I mean, he had to cut back down to 135.
Yeah. He's a
So
big dude too. He's jacked.
I think he's really good. And then I look at Montel Jackson, and I just think he really struggles when the fight is up against the cage, and I think he struggles when he's not in the driver's seat. Like, I look at his wins in the UFC, and there against Ronnie Yaya. I mean, he had a good fight against Julio Arce, and I actually picked him in that fight to win, and I actually bet on him to beat Julio Arce. But he didn't really make it super clean. It was a 29-28 victory for Jackson there. And Arce's pretty good, but I'd probably chalk that up as his best win. You know,
Yeah.
Julio Arce is his best win. And then he's fighting JP Buys, Jesse Strader, Felipe Colares, Andre Soccer Mom, you know, like guys that he should win
Yeah.
against. And just the fights that jump off the board to me are when guys wrestle him up. And Brett Johns and Ricky Simone just wrestled him up, and he just he struggles when the guy is the aggressor and he's having to play defense, and he can't just sit there and wait on that 1-2 right down the middle. Because you look at most of his knockdowns, they're 1-2s down the middle. That's all it is. It's just he's got those long arms. He's gonna sit there, plant his feet, throw the 1-2 right down the middle. And most of the time, guys are trying to get out of range and they can't get out of range because he's so long. So could he come in here and do that against Blackshear? Sure. Because Blackshear is a guy that throws a good amount of volume on the feet, but really does like to take the fight to the ground. And I think he probably sees, you know, the weaknesses that I'm seeing where you can get him to the ground and you can do your work there. And I think Blackshear is a beast on the ground. So I got to go with Blackshear, man, especially as the underdog. I think if you like Jackson, I'd probably just take him by KO. But another great thing about Blackshear, he's never been finished. So he is a durable dude. And I expect him to come in here and wrestle his ass off. And if he can keep his cardio in check, I've mentioned his possible cardio issues. Usually he does tend to slow down in the third round. But it does look like he's been training at elevation for the past week or two. So I think Blackshear makes a lot of sense. I'm going to take him for a pick.
I like it.
Moving on, we got Luana Santos and Maria Agapova. Agapova coming in as the underdog against the 24-year-old Luana Santos. Luana Santos 2-0 in the UFC. Agapova has taken a good amount of time off since her last fight where she got submitted by Jillian Robertson and looked like she was having a seizure. She was biting her tongue. Not a pretty scene. She has not fought since September of 2022, so it's been nearly 2 years. Apparently, she's had some injuries and some financial troubles. She looks like she was homeless for a little bit, picked up the tattoo artist gig, not really working out. She went the Patreon route instead of OnlyFans. And here she is, maybe trying to get that last fight on her contract, maybe try to save her career. Very bad spot for Maria Agapova, but she is somewhat dangerous. And Luana Santos, 7-1, but still somewhat untested, in my opinion. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, untested for sure. Like, that's the thing that makes me nervous for Santos here. I mean, her wins, Juliana Miller by round 1 KO, which was a good performance. She landed 63 significant strikes through, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. But Juliana Miller's defense and her striking is like non-existent. It's like she was beating up a heavy bag. And then Stephanie Edgar, Luana made me a little nervous there towards the end of the fight. Like, she was struggling pretty badly. And, if that happens against Agapova has a little bit more experience. She's fighting higher level girls, like even Marina Moroz, like a girl who's been in the UFC a while, has a lot of experience and fought some good girls. Like, she lost to her, but she's getting that experience. Jillian Robertson, same way. She's only 27 or 8 years old, but fought a ton in the UFC. Now she's going to Luana Santos in her third fight. And even in like Santos's wins, she's a good striker, but she doesn't do anything that just completely, blows you away or just impresses you at all. Hell, in my opinion, I think she's she's not like real fast twitched or anything. She's kind of just got a slower motion striking style. I think on the feet, Agapova throws out enough volume at almost 5 significant strikes per minute that she'll be able to hang with her in that department. Santos is good with her judo. She could get fights to the ground, but Agapova's last 2 wins, only 2 wins in the UFC, come by submission. So she's dangerous there as well. If you ask me who the more dangerous fighter is, I mean, I think it's Agapova. I really do. She's willing to get in there and scrap. Santos fought in lower level competition. So I think the line is extremely off here. Minus 260 on Santos doesn't sit well with me. I know a lot of people are putting her in their parlays this week. They're kind of their anchors. But this is, for me, parlay buster type material of the week. Agapova, it's like a double-edged sword because she's posted that, she was homeless not long ago. She's had some injuries. Time away, had all of this stuff going on, which could be like detrimental to her fighting career, but it could also motivate her and light a fire under her ass that she's coming out here and getting this win at all costs. So I don't know what to make of it exactly. Do I think Luana Santos should win the fight? Yeah, I'm going to take her for my straight pick, but minus 260 is outrageous, man. I don't like that number at all. Plus 196 in women's MMA at this level, never a bad idea. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Very interesting stuff.
Well, it's getting even bigger. I mean, Luana Santos right now sit at minus 370, and Agapova comes back at plus 270. So,
that's crazy. That's like, it's like almost like you have to take a shot at the dog at those prices.
Yeah, it is trending that direction because, I mean, Maria Agapova lost to Shanna Dobson when she was a minus 1,400 favorite. So that's always a bad look. And Shanna Dobson was 3-4 in a professional record at the time. So that is one of the worst losses in UFC history. But you have to also look at, she's actually has like better wins than Luana Santos. Like it's a double-edged sword because she has more experience and she actually has better wins than Luana Santos, because Luana was not fighting anybody good on the regional scene. And the only time she did, she lost. She lost to Jenna Bishop by split decision. And even her UFC fights, Juliana Miller's trash. And Stephanie Egger is not great either. And that was a catch weight, really. Because, I don't know, I mean, Luana Santos looked fat in that fight, to be honest, bro. She weighed in. Exactly. They're supposed to be at 135. She weighed in at 139. And she's a fighter that usually fights at 125. And I guess based on her socials, she like, I don't know, wasn't there all there mentally, and she had to like dial it in now that she's going down to 125 or fighting at 125. So I guess you got to watch weights to see what she weighs in at, because how do you fight at 125? You're supposed to fight at 135 and you weigh 139. She was thick that night. But yeah, I guess in this fight, man, I think Luana Santos has a good chance to sub Agapova because Agapova has been subbed a lot throughout her career. But I don't really think the skill gap on the feet is that wide. And I'm not really going to trust Luana Santos to, just bully her way to the ground and get a submission. So this is a wide line. I will take Luana Santos for the pick, but Agapova, I don't think should be this big of an underdog.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave.
My last point on this is just like, I look at the Marina Moroz fight, and Luana Santos, first, she's never really hit adversity besides later in the fight against Edgar, who doesn't really offer a lot of adversity on the feet. So, I mean, if Agapova can come out here and make it scrappy in the first, land some big shots, and Santos gets a takedown, almost has a submission locked in, and Agapova survives, I think the tables could start to turn. Like, Agapova was stuck in a deep rear naked choke against Moroz, and the next thing you know, she works her way out of it, gets Moroz's back, has her in a good position. Like, if those kind of sequences happen here against Santos, I don't know how Santos is going to deal with that. Like, we've never seen her offer any ounce of adversity at this level before. So I don't know, man. Something gives me a bad feeling about this one.
It's a greasy one,
Oh, yeah.
Low level MMA. Let's move on to another women's MMA fight. Jasmine Jasudavicius coming in as the underdog against the debuting Fatima Kline. Is it Fatima or Fatima? How do you say it?
I read it as Fatima, but
I think it's Fatima. I don't know. Fatima Kline, we'll call her that. She's making her debut. She is the, what is it, in LFA?
LFA, yeah.
Yeah, LFA champion.
Or no, Cage Fury.
Cage Fury. Cage Fury, strawweight champion. So she's fighting up a weight class in her UFC debut, probably due to the short notice. Just Jasudavicius was supposed to fight the higher ranked Viviane Araujo, but here she is fighting a debuting 23-year-old who is a pretty highly rated prospect because she is undefeated, champion of a pretty solid regional promotion with a lot of grappling background, a lot of grappling experience as far as being in there, competing in grappling stuff. And Jasudavicius, man, she's 35. She might be in her prime right now, or she might be a little bit past it. But she has a lot more experience as far as UFC level, just overall professional experience. And, she is coming off a pretty damn good performance. So I was pretty shocked to see that Kline was the favorite. But if you watch the film, I guess you could probably understand it. Like she does have a lot of great skills. But as a UFC debuter, her as the favorite is pretty shocking. What do you make of it?
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. I thought she was going to open as a pretty big underdog, and I think she might have a little bit, like up towards plus 200. Line came crashing down. But I think a lot of people are putting stock into the fact that she trains with Erin Blanchfield. They're in each other's corner. Some people say she's a better, like, straight up wrestler than Erin Blanchfield, and if she is, she'll find success, I think, at the UFC level. But Jasmine's been in there with some good fighters. Jasmine has a lot of experience. Her striking's getting better. I think she's going to be a lot bigger and stronger here than Fatima, with Fatima fighting up. But it just seems like a classic spot where you're getting a girl with, or even guy with experience fighting a debuter, and somehow this line is flipped to where the person with all the experience and good wins in the UFC turns out as the underdog. It just seems like a system play where you got to take a shot on Jasmine at this price. I mean, yeah, she beat up Priscilla Cachoeira on the ground and then submitted her in round 3. Cachoeira doesn't really have much of a ground game. Before that, she loses a decision to Tracy Cortez, where she just kind of got outworked on the feet. But the impressive win over Miranda Maverick, where she was a big underdog in that fight, and she was able to land a takedown of her own outstriker, cruise to a decision there. And then she's fighting girls like Natalia Silva. She even fought Julia Pilastri, who we saw a few weeks ago on Contender Series, and beat her. Gabriela Fernandez, like, this girl is getting more well-rounded with each fight out. So if Fatima comes in, uses the wrestling effectively in the first round, maybe she wins the first. But being a debuter, that gas tank, sometimes we see the adrenaline dumps. Sometimes these fighters start to fade. And if she comes out here and just doesn't have success against the bigger fighter in Jasudavicius, I think she could be in trouble. So it's an interesting line. I'm taking Jasmine. At first, I was on Fatima, but just thinking about it logically, we see this story all the time, man. Debuters as favorites in the UFC against experience doesn't always play out the best. So I'm going to take Jasudavicius.
Yeah, I don't think Jasmine has any good wins in the UFC, to be honest. I mean, Miranda Maverick is her best win, but Miranda Maverick, she's been around for a good amount of time, but I don't really think she's that good. Like, I don't. Like, Miranda Maverick, who's her best win? You couldn't name it. She doesn't have good wins.
Yeah.
She's actually, every time she's fought somebody good, she lost. And in that fight, I really just think she won because there was that eye poke. Like, Miranda Maverick said she couldn't see out of one eye for like the entire fight or after round 1. And Jasmine, she has good wrestling and she's tough. But other than that, I don't really think she has much. She has no head movement on the feet. She has a 1-2 with some leg kicks. Other than that, she doesn't really have much. And I think skill for skill, I think Fatima Kline might actually be better. I think she does have. I think she has a lot better wrestling than Erin Blanchfield, straight up. Like, she might not have like the best, a better ground game, like when the fight hits the ground, where like fight ending ground game. But I think she has the better wrestling. I think she has the better stand up. And she does have a good game off of her back too. If Jasmine can get takedowns, she might be able to wet blanket her, but Jasmine really doesn't do damage on top unless it's Priscilla Cachoeira, who can't do shit off of her back. So I am tended to lean Fatima Kline, but considering this is her UFC debut on short notice, I don't know that I would place a bet on her. I am going to take her for the pick because I think she is the better fighter. But considering the circumstances, I'm not sure that I'm willing to bet on it, but I will take her for a pick.
Yeah, I think my big thing that steered me away from Fatima is the fact that she's 6-0 on regional scene fights, and she's only got 3 finishes. Like, if she was out there with 4 or 5, 6 finishes, just dominating these girls with submissions, TKOs, whatever, I'd be more inclined here. But I think her game is always just to kind of ride that control time, and we just see that kind of go south in the UFC. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But I just don't like seeing her fighting girls that are 1-0, and she's going all the way to decision with them, with that pedigree of wrestling and ground game. Like, I just wish she had more submissions under her sleeve. And
I think that's a plus. I think that's a plus.
You do?
To prove that she can go 3 rounds, and if like you watch the fights, she's dominating the fight the whole time.
Yeah,
she's in control the entire time. I think that's a plus. Like, I would rather get that than Jacqueline Amaram, who's getting round 1 subs every fight. Yeah. And then she gasses out,
falls off a cliff. Yeah,
like, I'd rather
I see that too.
See that she's going 3 rounds and dominating the entire fight. So, yeah, well, we can move on from this women's MMA fight. All right, we got Josh Van sitting at -200 against Charles Johnson sitting at +154. 11-year age gap here. Josh Van, still 22 years of age, was supposed to fight Tagir Ulanbekov. Ulanbekov misses weight. And then Josh Van says, sorry, buddy, not fight. And Ulanbekov was also sick. But here he is, a little bit later, taking on Charles Johnson, who's always game for a fight. It's a good fight, man. I mean, everybody loves to see Josh Van fight, and more often than not, people like to see Charles Johnson fight because he's a guy that wants to stand and strike, and so does Josh Van. So it's probably a striker's delight. Who do you got winning?
Yeah, it was a tough one at first, but I look at Charles Johnson's record, and he did struggle early on in his UFC career. I think there was a point he was on like a 3-fight losing streak. Ode Osborne, Cody Durden, and Rafael Estevam, all guys who have decent grappling and wrestling, especially Durden and Estevam. That's kind of like where he has struggled. When guys are able to take him down and control him, he just gives up minutes, and he doesn't really give himself a chance to win rounds in that fashion. But where he really excels is when these guys, he can kind of take them to deep waters. The Jake Hadleys who started to slow down, he's able to outbox them with the volume. He doesn't necessarily hit very hard, even though he landed a knockdown in that fight. He's not out here KOing anybody. He's not out here, besides Jimmy Flick, but he's not out here, finishing a lot of fights by submission or knockout. He's going to just take you to deep waters and try to win those last 2 rounds. And guys that don't have good cardio, Azat Maxim took his first loss. I think it was his first loss against Charles because he got tired, and Charles was just able to take over. But when you're going up against a guy in Josh Van who has a similar, skill set as far as the cardio, he's very good with the volume. His cardio is good. He comes on late in fights and really pours it on. I think it comes down to who's just a better striker here, because I think both guys aren't going to gas. Both guys can go the distance. And if you're going to tell me who's the faster striker and probably better boxer all around, I think it is Josh Van. I think Johnson sometimes could fall into this, these moments when he's just not very high volume. He will kind of explode with these, multiple punch combinations, but there's other times where he's just kind of moving side to side, circling out without throwing a lot. And I think Van's going to be on the gas the whole time, throwing shots, working the body. And, if there's any wrestling in this fight, I don't think either guy is going to have success. I think both guys have good get-up games, good takedown defense for the most part. So it's going to play out on the feet. Give me the guy with the more volume, the guy with the more speed, and, cardio is kind of a wash. So I got to take Josh Van.
Yeah, I think they're kind of really similar fighters. I mean, slow starters, guys that kind of build into the fight. So to me, it's like who gets going earlier, and who can keep up the pace. And I think both guys can keep the pace, but I think eventually Josh Van's going to take over just because he has more ability to just land in combination and put combinations together. And I just think he's the more crisp boxer. Like, Charles Johnson at times can find himself just backing up against the cage and fighting off the back foot. And that's just where Josh Van is going to take over. Like, Charles Johnson's a guy that likes to move around the cage, circle around, pitter patter, and explode in with like a jab, a 1-2, a leg kick, get out of range. And Josh Van's just a guy that walks you down and throws in combinations, rips to the body. It just wears you out. So I think it's a great matchup for Van in the fact that Charles Johnson is going to be moving backward and he could just keep moving forward the entire fight. And I think Van's probably the better striker. He's younger. And I think his game is still evolving. Like he's still 22 and he's still pretty young in his professional career. He's a guy that fights pretty often as well. So same with Charles Johnson. But I'm just saying, like, Josh Van fights pretty often. So he's always going to be getting more cage time under his belt. He's going to keep continuing to grow in the gym. So I think Josh Van wins this fight. The only way that I don't think he wins it is if, like, he isn't able to take over. But I think he will be. And I guess the concern would be that this fight probably goes to a decision because neither guy, I don't see either guy getting KO'd. Charles Johnson's never been finished. Josh Van has never been knocked out. And I don't think Charles Johnson is going to be shooting double leg takedowns. So the only real concern would be, like, what are the judges seeing? Yeah. But I think they're going to see Josh Van moving forward and pushing the pace. And I think he probably gets his hand raised. So, minus 200 might not be the sexiest line.
Yeah.
But I do think he wins. And honestly, I don't think it's like a terrible parlay piece in my opinion. I don't think it's terrible. Because I think it's a good matchup for him,
Yeah. The thing I love about Van is, first of all, he's tough. And to get on the inside to really land some good body shots and then come upstairs with the hooks, he's willing to eat a shot. And Charles Johnson, when he gets backed up against the cage, doesn't throw them that many strikes. He's more playing defense, but he'll look to counter. But I just don't think it's dangerous enough to phase Van. I think Van will eat shots to give one here, and he's going to have the more power coming back to him. I think that's going to be the story all night long. Like Van against Felipe Boons was eating some what looked like big shots, but it's like he was almost baiting Boons to land those and throw them so he could just get right on the inside, drill the body, and eventually, hurt him bad enough to find the TKO. So, yeah, this is going to be fun though, because both these guys are 1000% game to fight at all times. Like these guys come out and aren't scared to throw hands and trade shots. So yeah, this is one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most this week.
One last thing, where Hadley messed up, because I think Hadley might be the better boxer, but where Hadley messed up is Charles Johnson would throw something and Hadley would be so intent on blocking it or like shelling up that by the time he could return with anything, Charles Johnson was out of there. He's just out of range. Like Josh Van's a guy that he's going to walk through the fire to land his shots. And in this matchup, he needs to do that. And I trust him to do that. So that's why I'm taking him.
He's so fast too.
Yeah.
He's fast as shit.
Good. Moving on, we got Christian Rodriguez coming in as the favorite against Julian Erosa. Sit at plus 190. Julian Erosa. Cash for the dog his last time out. Shout out Juicy J. Cash in the submission his last time out against Ricardo Ramos. Plus 575. Gotta love him. He is coming in as the underdog here. He is the older fighter with a lot more experience. And Christian Rodriguez is now at the point where the books are respecting him because he's picked up 3 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row, and taken the O of 3 straight fighters. So he's not going to take an O here from Julian Erosa. He's already got 11 losses. But, minus 250 is a little bit interesting because Christian Rodriguez is good. But for the first time in his last 3 fights, he fought an absolute bum in Josh Weems, and he was a big favorite. But his last 3 fights, he's getting respected by the books. What do you make of that?
Yeah, this is one where it's another one where everybody is going to be parlaying Christian Rodriguez. Minus 250 is based off of him beating these guys that are good. Like Cameron Simon's a good fighter. He's just young. That maybe didn't have that high level experience. Isaac Dolgarian probably should have got the draw in that one, if not the win, depending on how you scored the first round, like 10-8 for Isaac or not. I don't think C-Rod necessarily deserved that win. I think that was draw or Isaac, just based off what happened early in the fight. Raul Rosas Jr., big learning experience for him there too. His only loss, is Jonathan Pierce, a guy who was able to go out there and wrestle him. Put him in some bad spots in that fight. C-Rod had him in bad spots as well. But, I look at C-Rod, and he's not going out here lately, at least, and finishing anybody outside of Joshua Weems. Takes Raul Rosas Jr. to decision. Cameron Simon, decision. And then Isaac Dolgarian was basically completely out of gas, no legs, and he couldn't finish that show either. But Julian Erosa, if you can't put him out on the feet, especially in the first round, he'll either fight you like a zombie and come forward and make it a war, or he's just, if you can't really hurt him on the feet, he's just going to keep coming forward and he lands some decent shots. He's somewhat powerful. He's very long and hard to deal with, and he's going to look massive compared to Christian Rodriguez. I mean, Julian Erosa is 6'1", Rodriguez 5'7". I mean, I don't know, minus 250. I just don't really see it for a guy who's getting dominated most fights and just waiting for his opponents to gas. Because if he has Julian Erosa on his back the whole entire first round, and he thinks, okay, now I'm going to come out in the second, Erosa is going to gas out, and it's my time to shine, like's happened in the last 3 fights, probably not going to happen. Like, Erosa is a guy that has the ability to fight like a junkyard dog for all 3 rounds. So, if Christian Rodriguez drops the first round, I think this is Erosa's fight to win, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to beat Julian Erosa, you got to knock him out.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way he's losing. And that is a concern, of course, because Julian Erosa at this point has been knocked out 7 times in his career. And before he had the win his last time out, he was on back-to-back knockout losses. And, his real weakness is like he gets caught with that right hand. Every time he just gets caught with that right hand, it's like stumbles him. He doesn't get like put out cold, but he gets stunned. And then guys can usually follow up and put him away. But, Christian Rodriguez is not really a power puncher.
Yep.
Doesn't really got, that big pop in his hands. And he is an ex-bantamweight who couldn't really make weight. Should be fighting at 145, but he's going to be a lot smaller. I know it says on the screen 5'10", but Juicy J is 6'1". He's a big dude who has a lot of volume, a good ground game, and he's just a lot more experience as well. I mean, I think this is like his 3rd stint in the UFC. Yeah. He's just there. He's just there, and he's constantly cashing as an underdog. Now, Chris Rodriguez, to me, is unsubmittable, bro. Like, if Juicy J submits Christian Rodriguez, that would be crazy, because all the positions I've seen Christian Rodriguez in at this point, he looks unsubmittable. So this fight is favored to go over 2.5 rounds, probably favored to go to a decision. And if that is true, I think Juicy J has a good chance to win, because he's going to have a lot of volume. He's got a good ground game. Like, he can deal with C-Rod on the ground. He can definitely threaten with some submissions. That always helps. So, I mean, it's a really tough spot. But at the end of the day, just can you trust Julian Erosa's chin? I would say no. But at the same time, C-Rod really hasn't been knocking anybody out. Not that he has like bad striking. I think he's a good technical striker, but he just doesn't really extend himself too much. And he's not really looking to land big shots. Now, granted, he was kind of fighting 2 grapplers in Isaac Dolgarian and Raul Rosas Jr. So he hasn't really had a ton of, I guess 3, Jonathan Pierce too. He hasn't had a ton of opportunities in the UFC to really show off his hands. Maybe he gets 2 here. It's a tough one, man. I don't think Christian Rodriguez at minus 250 really makes the most sense to me. I am going to take Christian Rodriguez for a pick, but I don't think I would bet him at that. If anything, I would bet Julian Erosa, maybe by decision or something like that. But for a pick, I think Christian Rodriguez is good enough to win a decision, is good enough to possibly get a knockout. But yeah, it's just pricey, man. It's super pricey. So
I like it. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. So moving on, we got Cody Brundage sitting as the underdog against Abdulrazak Alhassan. And Alhassan is 38 years old. Last time I looked, man, I did not know Alhassan was 38. He doesn't really look 38, but he is. And Cody Brundage is 8 years younger, coming off the loss to Bo Nickel. And again, he's going to be on the main card. So main card Cody. Got to call him that at this point. And yeah, I mean, this is one where you got 2 guys where Cody Brundage is kind of a killer be killed type of fighter, and Abdulrazak Alhassan somewhat that way as well. Big power, fire hydrant type of dude. So we're probably in for some type of finish. Who do you think gets it done?
Yeah, I mean, Cody Brundage has kind of been like first round or bust. It seems like. And, when he gets the DQ against Malkoon, kind of throw that out the window. But, Zachary Reese, he's caught in the triangle, slams him. Trayshawn Gorey knocked out very fast in the first round. Dolce Lungambula submitted in the first round. Like, I think all around, like if you put everything together, he's probably the better mixed martial artist than Alhassan here. I think Alhassan's a guy who's got a judo background, and then he's got a really powerful overhand right that he throws. And if he lands, he can definitely do some damage. But Alhassan can be taken down. We saw Joe Pyfer take him down 3 times and submit him. Joaquin Buckley took him down 5 times. I just don't know. I just don't know that he can defend the takedowns against Brundage here. Brundage is a good wrestler, comes from a good camp. He's got dynamite in his hands as well. The big thing for him, like when he's losing, it's really against guys that have good wrestling and control. Like he was losing badly against Malkoon, good wrestler and control. Got in a bad situation against Reese, but he was kind of on the offense before getting caught in that. Adolfo Vieira, same thing, had him badly hurt in the first round with a big shot, and then kind of gets controlled, eventually submitted. So if he can just be offensive with his wrestling, I think he's going to be better on the ground than Alhassan. I don't think Cody Brundage is a slouch at all in the wrestling department. He's got some decent submissions. He just can't get clipped early in the fight, because if this thing does go past 1, honestly, I don't mind Cody Brundage to dog it out. Like I know we've seen him. A lot of people talk about how he quits in fights and stuff, but I mean that's when he's fighting guys that are better grappling and have better pressure than Alhassan. I just think if Alhassan can't find a big knockout shot, Cody Brundage could kind of take over the fight. So, and even though Brundage lost the last fight to Bo Nickel, it almost felt like a win just because he lasted, over 1.5 rounds. That under 1.5 was like minus 500 or something crazy. So, yeah, I don't know. I see Brundage maybe bouncing back here, getting a win. Just got to stay safe in that first round, use his wrestling, stay on top. I think he lands really good ground and pound. He's a powerful dude. And I think he could even put away Alhassan if he wanted to. I think this is a decent underdog look. Alhassan really, lately hasn't shown me a ton. It's making me want to run to the window and bet him here. So I'm going to stick with the dog.
Yeah, this is a weird one, man. Cody Brundage can wrestle, but he can't really do anything after that, man. Like he can get a takedown, but then you watch him get a takedown against Cedriques Dumas, gets the takedown right away, and then jumps guillotine, ends up on his back. And then he does that again, ends up on his back. And he ends up losing a decision to Cedriques Dumas where he was on his back pretty much the entire fight.
Landed. He's got that Poirier syndrome. He can't be doing that shit.
Bro, he's fight IQ is terrible, for one, for Cody Brundage. He's just a guy that's going to go out there and go for a finish. And if it doesn't present itself, he's going to get finished. And I don't really see him submitting Abdul Razak Alhassan because Cody Brundage don't really got a submission bag like that. I don't really know that he knocks out Abdul Razak Alhassan either. Could he? Sure. But I would take Alhassan's power over Cody Brundage to me. And I don't really see Cody Brundage wet blanketing him for 3 rounds, dude. Like, I just don't. Maybe the elevation plays a factor, and Cody trains at elevation, but he's never really had great cardio, for one. But he does have the advantage that he trains there, and Alhassan doesn't. So maybe he can wet blanket him for the first round or 2 and then just outlast a gassed Alhassan. Maybe. But I think eventually Cody finds himself getting hit with a big shot by Alhassan and getting knocked out. Alhassan's 38, and really all he has is power. But I think at this point it might just be the only thing that he needs. Like if Cody had a good ground game, I would like him a lot more. But like he gets takedowns, and then he gets reversed by Michal Olashechek and gets ground and pounded out. Or he gets a knocked out against Adolfo Vieira, and then he pulls guillotine against Adolfo Vieira and gets arm triangle. He's just not a smart fighter. And really, you look at his wins in the UFC, it's Dolce Lungambula, who's trash, Trayshawn Gore, who's trash, and then Zach Reese, who he slammed him on his head. Like, I just can't really get behind Cody Brundage, man. He's an exciting fighter, don't get me wrong, because he's going to be getting a finish or he's going to be getting finished. But Alhassan, I think, probably just has the fire hydrant build to do it. I'm going to take Alhassan, man. It's a really greasy one, but I will take Alhassan.
But with the let me just counter your argument that Brundage hasn't beat anybody. You look at Alhassan, Claudio Ribeiro, Alessio De
Nico
Chirico.
Price.
Huh?
Nico Price. He beat
Oh, bro, come
Price.
on. Did you see Nico Price's last fight? And other than that, though, like these dudes like Sabah Homage. Fuck, I don't even remember Sabah Homage. And he fought him 2 times in a row and
He hasn't
knocked
beat
him out
anybody
both
either.
times.
Yeah, I mean, it's two guys that really haven't beaten anybody. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely for sure. I think no, I mean Brundage has shown that if he gets hit with big shots, you can definitely put him out. Alhassan, looking at his record, he has been knockout or bust though. I mean, it's every single fight
oh
he's
yeah,
won in the UFC is by knockout, and then he loses decisions. He slows down a little bit. He's just got to keep the volume up because if he stops throwing volume, he's going to leave the door open for Cody to make it close, and that's definitely not what you want against a guy who's probably going to land takedowns at some point. Um, yeah, it's honestly a coin flip what's going to happen because again, the chin of Brundage could definitely go. Alhassan could just be taken down and smashed up a little bit, make the fight close. It's a weird one. Probably best staying away, honestly.
you know what would be crazy if Cody Brundage, what the odds would be for Cody Brundage by decision if he ends up just like wrestling his way to a decision
Yeah,
and Al Hassan's gassed out at elevation, just able to lay on top of him type of thing. That'd be wild. I would definitely like to look at the number and just see if it's worth it. But
the elevation is going to be key this week. I think.
yeah,
It's hot in Utah is nasty.
Always got to take that into account. Moving on, we got Gabriel Bonfim. Speaking of gassers, coming in at minus 400 against Loosa, who sits at plus 285. Obviously, Bonfim coming off the loss where he gassed out and got finished by Nicholas Dalby to give himself the first loss in his professional career. So he's looking to bounce back against Loosa, who has fought at elevation before. Back at UFC 278 in Salt Lake City, he picked up a win against AJ Fletcher by decision. And Loosa is now 2-1 in the UFC with a no contest where he was losing to Brian Battle and did fight Jack Della Maddalena on the Dana White Contender Series. People always got to throw that in there because he didn't look bad and he's actually never been finished. So Loosa's never been finished. The only time Bonfim has gotten his hand raised is when he gets a finish. He's actually never been to the judges' scorecards ever in his career. So it's an interesting one. Got a pure finisher against a guy who's never been finished at elevation. What are you thinking?
Yeah, the thing that just jumps off the page to me is, like you said, Bonfim never really been a decision. The guy is a finisher. He kind of like even against Dalby, he just kind of empties the tank looking for it. And Loosa has been super close to being finished in the UFC before, but he just fights through it. And even if he's tired, the guy fights till the end. He makes fights dirty. He's tough and durable, and he likes to scrap. And that's kind of the kryptonite of a guy like Bonfim. Like if Bonfim comes out here, cracks Loosa early, and Losa's on shaky legs, maybe Bonfim finishes him, maybe. But if he doesn't, I think he's going to be in a world of trouble at elevation and gassing out like he did against Dalby. Losa's a guy that is decent all the way around. Like his striking, he's got some good pop. He's very technical with it, and he's shown he's strong enough to just kind of muscle takedowns, and definitely in key spots too when he needs them. I don't think he's going to be out here wrestling with Bonfim. I think Bonfim's very dangerous on the ground as well. I think where Loosa is gonna thrive in this fight is to just kind of make it ugly on the feet, use his technical boxing, land the jab over and over, and the leg kicks, and then see what happens if you make it out of the first round. Because if this thing goes past 1.5 rounds, I kind of start to lean Loosa here based off what we've seen and what we haven't seen on Bonfim. So yeah, man, this is tough. Plus 285. I'm sure the line's growing for him. I'm sure he's going to be the bigger and bigger dog because the Bonfim, that's a loaded last name. People see that and they run to the betting window to throw him in their parlays. I'm sure a lot of money is going to come in on him, but I think Loosa might be a little bit of a sharp play this week based off the fact that he hasn't been finished really, and he's very, very tough. Man, I want to say give me the underdog here. I'm gonna look like an idiot if he loses, but I'm gonna take a shot on him as the pick to win this fight. I mean, I like what Bonfim does against lower level competition. Like, yeah, he looks really, really good, but if that submission or knockout never comes, I think he's gonna be in trouble here.
Yeah. Um, it is going to be looking bad for Bonfim if this fight gets into round 2. Um, maybe he switches up his game plan after he gasses out, but I don't really see it. I think he's
It's
just a
just
guy.
not in their blood.
Yeah, it's just not really. I mean, maybe
His brother kind of
maybe
the
for
last
Ishmael.
fight was boring, but
Ishmael knows how to win a decision, but Gabriel Bonfim does not. And I think on the feet, Angelosa can have some success because he's a pretty solid kickboxer. And if you're an aggressive fighter that comes forward, he can hit you. Like he's got a pretty good jab. And he was struggling against Brian Battle because Brian Battle is a guy that skirts to the outside, uses a lot of kicks, and that's just not really Bonfim. Bonfim's just in your face. So I think Losa can tag him up on the feet, but he can also get tagged by Bonfim because Bonfim is powerful. And I think it would be really dumb for Angelosa to shoot a takedown here because Gabriel Bonfim is probably going to snatch something up because his ground game is disgusting. Like his ability to find a submission just in the blink of an eye is remarkable, honestly. Um, and I think in this one, Bonfim obviously going to win early, but I don't think it's going to be super clean unless he finishes him. And then later in the fight, I think Losa probably should take over. But I also have to look at, who are the power punchers that Losa has faced. He has faced Jack Della, but Jack Della did kind of beat the shit out of him. And Jack Della, for how powerful he is, he's not a guy that's going to be sitting down, really looking to put you away. Like he has amazing boxing, and he just relies on how crisp he is, land his shots, super relaxed, super fluid. Bonfim is going in there to take your head off. So I think if there any time for Losa to get finished, it's probably against Gabriel Bonfim. But if he does survive, then Losa is going to look pretty damn live. For a pick, I got to go with Bonfim just because I think he's the better fighter. But the elevation you got to take into a factor. I wouldn't put Bonfim in a parlay. Honestly, I'd rather probably just take him in round one or two, or just take him by like submission or something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't play his money line because you're only getting round 1 or 2, to be honest. So I don't even think his money line is worth it. Probably take him by finish in round 1 or 2. And if you don't like that, then take the Losa side. Take Losa 2-3. Take Losa by decision, something like that. Makes sense to me. But Bonfim is the pick. Moving on, we got Drew Dober coming in at minus 125 against Jean Silva, set at minus 102. And I think right now the betting odds are complete pick'em, sitting at minus 115 or minus 110, minus 110 either side. So we got a coin flip fight here, and Drew Dober is the older fighter, the fighter fighting at his weight class, the fighter fighting in at elevation where he trains. And Gene Silva just got a big knockout win against Charles Jourdain at UFC 303, fighting up a weight class on, what is it, like 8 days notice type of thing. So Gene Silva's taking a nice little shot here to pick up a big win against Drew Dober. And Drew Dober's taking a big risk, taking on a guy out of his weight class, a dangerous dude. So this is a good fight. This is probably one of the best fights on the card, if not the best fight on the card. So who do you got, man? I think there's going to be a lot of people on either side, but I'm interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, it's tough because both guys are fun, powerful strikers. Both guys have the finishing ability. I like Gene Silva's power a little bit more. I think, pound for pound, he's definitely holds more pop in his hands. But Dober's just been, outside of the loss to Matt Favola by TKO, the guy has been the most durable dude we've seen. I mean, he gets knocked down every now and then. He just eats a shot though. If that chin's still holding up, I think it's a style that could frustrate Silva because Silva's going to be looking for these big shots every now and then, where Dober's going to be moving well on his feet, landing combinations. But at some point, like I feel like Dober's been hit so many times. Like at some point, the chin's got to start to go. In his last fight against Moicano, we didn't really have to see a lot of that because Moicano's game plan was to get the fight to the ground, which he did successfully. Both guys landed 23 significant strikes. He kind of took the striking away from Dober. And, Dober off of his back just didn't really have much of an answer. I'm interested to see if that's kind of a path that Gene Silva could take here. Gene Silva fights with the the fighting nerds with guys like Caio Bahayo and some very good grapplers and wrestlers. I feel like that's in his back pocket. We just haven't had to see it yet. But on the feet, like I feel like Dober might land more often, but Silva's going to land more cleanly and the bigger shots here. And if Dober has taken all this damage and it's all accumulated, maybe that chin is just ready to go. It's happened one time against Frivola. Maybe he gets hit with the next big shot, and it happens again. And I think Gene Silva's a guy who's very capable of that. Experience wise, obviously Dober has fought everybody. He's been in the UFC for a long, long time. Uh, against a guy like Silva who's that skilled, I don't really know if it's a big pro for Drew Dober here to have all that experience. I see it more the way that he's taken a lot of damage and he has a lot of wear and tear. And now you're getting this young up and coming stud in Gene Silva who hits like a truck. Like maybe that's not the best thing for Drew Dober right now. I think Drew Dober's knows he's probably not making a run at the title, especially coming off the loss to Moicano. I think he's fighting for money now, and I think he's probably, getting closer and closer to that retirement date. He's just fought so many people in the UFC, so many fights. I just don't see him doing it for a whole lot longer. I think Gene Silva is. I think he has the goods. I think he's going to be a very good fighter in the UFC, and I do think this is a fight where you might see him mix up that wrestling game a little bit, see what he's got there too. So I'm going to go with the guy with the momentum, Gene Silva. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one because it is a very close fight at the end of the day.
Yeah, considering it's a coin flip, I'm tempted to just go with the guy that is fighting at his weight class with more experience, um, and is fighting at the place that he trains. And the guy that has more notice. He was actually supposed to fight on this card. So just at that, I'm tempted to just take Drew Dober, but honestly, I think Gene Silva has a pretty good chance to win this fight because I was really impressed against Charles Jourdain, just his composure in that fight where Charles Jourdain was throwing a lot at him and he just didn't really care. He was just like, you could throw whatever the fuck you want at me. I don't really care. Eventually, I'm going to land my shots. And he did. Like, he knocked him down in the first and then just put him away in the second. Like, I don't really think Drew Dober is a guy that has crazy good striking. He just has big power. Like, he's just a guy that likes to load up on a big left hand. And I think Gene Silva is actually probably the better striker when it comes down to finding his openings, looking for openings, being patient. Like, Drew Dober's not a counterpuncher. He's really just an aggressive guy. So that actually makes me kind of think that Gene Silva is the better striker and could actually pull off a victory here. And you mentioned it, like the age, the accumulation of damage. I mean, he's had 40 fights. And at some point, I mean, we already saw him get knocked out by Frivola. And we saw him get hurt by Terrence McKinney. Like, he can get hurt. He does have the crimson chin. And I love Drew Dober, but eventually it starts to hit you. And, that chin really isn't going to get tested against a Ricky Glenn or even a Moicano because Moicano just grapple fucked him the entire fight. So since the Frivola fight, really haven't seen him fight a guy that has big power. And Gene Silva has big power. And honestly, moving up a weight class for this fight, I think his skills could translate well. And considering Drew Dober's not really like a big, tall guy. I mean, he's 5'8", fire hydrant type of dude. I think Gene Silva has a good chance to win this fight, and I'm actually going to take him for the pick. But I don't know that I'll be betting it just because of the circumstances, So, yeah, I'll take Gene Silva for the pick.
Gene Silva too at 145 he's a big dude, man. He's strong. Making 145 is probably extremely tough. He didn't make weight, so
Yeah.
But I mean, people talk about how much bigger Dober's going to be. Like Dober's 5'8", Silva's 5'7". They're both built similar. I mean, they're both full of muscle. I don't think it's going to be a big strength and size discrepancy here. And Gene Silva definitely already made that jump from fighting a guy like Weston Wilson and had a massive jump up in competition to a guy with a lot of experience like Charles Jourdain, and he handled it flawlessly. So I'm not real concerned about a jump in competition here, even though Dober is better than Jourdain. I don't know. Something's telling me Gene Silva is going to go on this crazy knockout streak, and he's going to turn into one of these very marketable guys in this division, one of these divisions.
Yeah. He's got to respect Drew Dober's power, though. If he goes in there and not respecting him like Jordan, he just didn't respect him at all. If he does that, then he could get put on a poster. So we'll see. Should be a good fight, though. Brings us to the co-main event. We got Santiago Ponzinibbio, 37 years of age, fighting the 40-year-old Muslim Salikhov. Salikhov sits as the underdog here. And honestly, not a great co-main event. I really hate this for the co-main event, dude. I don't know why they wouldn't do Drew Dober.
I was just gonna say, like, that's a much better spot.
Maybe they switch it up. We'll see. But yeah, two old guys, well past their prime. I guess maybe both guys fight a kind of a fan friendly type of style. I mean, Salikhov's a striker, Ponzinibbio is a striker, so maybe they just put that there and said, yeah, we might get a KO some way. But yeah, I mean, Salikhov just got knocked out by Randy Brown, and Ponzinibbio just got knocked out by Kevin Holland. So both guys coming off knockout losses. What are you thinking on this one, man?
Yeah, it's tough. Like when you get two guys at 40 years old and 37, it's just hard to gauge. Are they going to look as good as they did the last time out, or are they going to look as good as they did 2 years ago? Because I mean, if Ponzinibbio still looks as good as he has, against Holland, he got knocked out in the third, but before that, it's just kind of a bland fight for him. But I mean, knocked out Alex Morono in the fight before that. Took Michel Pereira to a split decision before that. Landed 105 significant strikes, and Michel Pereira since has just gone on an insane tear. Loses a split decision to Jeff Neal. So I mean, if he would have won those two split decisions there, I think this is a whole different story. And he's probably a rightful minus 215 favorite. But Muslim Salikhov does have good power in the hands. His striking's hard to deal with. It's like that, that kung fu weird kicks coming from every angle. He's able to catch guys with it at times. But, being 40 years old now, coming off a bad knockout loss, that right hand from Randy Brown, it's a tough look to think he's going to bounce back and be able to eat shots against a guy in Ponzinibbio who probably still does hold some decent power at 37 years old. But I don't know, man. It's interesting to me. I just hate the age factor here. I don't trust either of these guys at this point in their careers. I'd love to take Ponzinibbio if this line was closer, but minus 215 is just kind of screaming at me to stay away. For the pick, I'm going to take Ponzinibbio. I think if he just kind of, doesn't get caught with anything clean in that first round, Salikhov does slow down. Like we've seen it in fights before. So yeah, I'm gonna take Ponzinibbio for the pick here. Not very confident though. What did you got,
bro? I'm looking at Muslim Salikhov's Tapology. His picture looks like it was taken in like the 60s, bro. Like his picture is literally black and white. It's a black and white image of him with boxing gloves on, no beard, full head of hair. Like Muslim Salikhov might be like 50 years old. Like he might actually be 50. I'm actually kind of, I'm not even joking. Like he might actually be like 50
because he looks like it's like a 1930s yearbook picture.
Yeah, I mean,
like for
he
an
made
athlete.
his debut in 2017. His UFC debut in 2017. How many 33-year-olds are the UFC signing?
Yeah,
like I think he probably might have forged his documents, bro. I think he might be older than 40 because that picture looks like it was in like the 80s, 60s, 70s. Black and white Tapology picture. Are we serious? Oh my God. That's just hilarious. But yeah, for the breakdown for this one, after I watched the film, man, I just don't think Salikhov can fight moving backwards. And Ponzinibbio is a guy that is almost always on the front foot, pushing the pace with his hands. And Salikhov has been knocked out with a right hand. What, 2 out of the last 3 fights? 2 out of the last 4 fights. He's been knocked out with a right hand. And Ponzinibbio loves to just go one to the body, right hand to the head. And Salikhov can't move backwards. Why? Because he's a plodding kung fu guy who is old and can't move his feet very well. So if he's got to fight off the back foot, he's not going to do well. And Ponzinibbio is probably going to be the one pressuring forward. Now, Ponzinibbio is not very durable himself. So could Salikhov land some spinning wheel kick and knock him out? Sure. But ultimately, I think Ponzinibbio is probably going to be the one moving forward and getting the better of the exchanges. he's the younger guy in this spot, which is crazy. But I think he probably gets a win here, maybe by knockout. I'm going to take Ponzinibbio for the pick, but this is just a disgusting co-main event, honestly. So. All right, let's move on to the main event. We got Rose Namajunas taking on Tracy Cortez. Cortez taking this on somewhat short notice. It's supposed to be Macy Barber. She steps in. She is the underdog, sitting at plus 186. Rose sitting at minus 245. Rose is still 32 years of age, but a wealth of experience, especially at a very high level. Tracy Cortez has won 11 fights in a row. And this is by far the biggest fight of her career. And I was actually watching her interview with Ariel Helwani today. She said she was contemplating not fighting again, which is very weird because apparently she's had some injuries and stuff. And this chick is always all over the place, in my opinion. Like she's just always, her mind is just always all over the place. In other places, like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but very weird to hear her say that and then be like, all right, this is the biggest opportunity of your career. And, short notice. She was supposed to fight the week after, I believe, against Miranda Maverick. So she was training, she was ready. She's ready to fight, but it is a different opponent. And Rose is, fought at a very high level. But Rose has also had her spots throughout her career where her mind is all over the place, like a Carlos Esparza fight. So we never really know exactly what we're going to get with Rose Namajunas. But to me, I think she's probably the better fighter, definitely deserving to be the favorite here. And I think she probably wins. What do you think?
Yeah, I think she should win too. I think 5 rounds is big for her because if Tracy Cortez doesn't come out here and finish Rose, which there's no signs whatsoever point to that happening. Tracy hasn't finished a single fight in the UFC, and she's fought in some girls that are far, far less of a competitor than Rose. So if this thing goes to decision, I just can't see her keeping up a pace with the wrestling long enough to win 3 rounds against Rose Namajunas. Like Rose isn't a slouch in that department at all. She knows how to defend takedowns. She knows how to steal rounds. She knows how to win minutes. I mean, she was winning minutes against Zhang Wei Li in a 5-round fight. And if you can win minutes and rounds against her, I just don't see how she's not going to win them against Cortez. Cortez did look really good in her last fight. Give her a lot of credit for beating Jasudavicius like that. Didn't even have to use her wrestling for much of the fight. She was able to outland her on the feet. But I mean, Jasudavicius on the feet and Rose Namajunas on the feet is going to be night and day. Rose is very technical. She's very slick with her striking. She's got a very high fight IQ with her striking as well. I think she's going to mix up the leg kicks. She's got a good jab. She's going to be very sharp. And even if Tracy does take down Rose, I don't see her be able to control the fight. And if Rose can, hit a sweep or reversal and get on top, Rose is very dangerous with the submissions. Like she's got a lot of good experience in that department as well. I'm going to take Rose for the pick. Like I said, Tracy at plus 186 is appealing to bet on because she's undefeated in the UFC. She's not shown any signs that she's, I don't know, got many weaknesses in her game. I just don't think it's to the level of Rose here. I think Rose is going to kind of expose her on the feet a little bit. And if it does hit the mat, I don't think Rose is going to be able or easy to hold down for that long. So give me Rose to win the fight.
Yeah, I think she wins. I think she's better everywhere, honestly. I think Tracy's a good fighter for sure. I mean, there's a reason she's won 11 fights in a row, but she's never fought a striker like Rose. And Rose does hold a 59% takedown defense, but you look like when she gets taken down, she usually is able to get back up almost right away, if not reverse position and end up on top. So I think the only way Tracy wins this fight is just like wet blanket for 25 minutes. And I definitely can't count on that because for one, she's never been in a 5-round fight in the UFC. And on the feet, I think Rose has crazy good movement. Like her instincts on the feet are truly one of the best in women's fighting in history. 100%. I will die on that hill. You watch that girl strike. She has amazing reads. She creates angles and just the instincts when, they actually start throwing hands is very good. Yep. And I don't think Tracy Cortez has ever seen that type of striking. So unless we get a absolute doozy from like a Carlos Esparza fight with Rose, I think she probably wins this fight and wins it by decision because I think Tracy is tough and I don't think she submits her nor knocks her out. So I'm going to take Rose by decision. But at the end of the day, this is women's MMA. And if it is going to decision, Rose is generally not a girl that separates herself a ton. So you are leaving it in the hands of the judges. And we never like to do that. So proceed with caution. But I do think Rose probably wins. And that's the breakdown for UFC Denver. Appreciate y'all for watching. As always, we gave you the picks, but if you want the bets, jump in the Home Fight Picks Premium membership. It's where you get all of our UFC bets every single week. And we got some cards coming up. I think we got 3 or 4 in a row. And then we got Contender Series next month. So stay tuned for that. But stay up to date at Home of Picks on the Instagram to stay up to date with everything, all the UFC betting. At HJ Picks on the medias for me. Where can I find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate you all. Till next time, the Double Leg signing out.